I'm going to talk a little bit about activism. It's very interesting how the word activist, like liberal, is pronounced in Washington, D.C. Activist. I'm proud to be an activist. You know, somebody said once that, and we're all activists here, so it's safe to say that here. Somebody said that activism was the price you pay, or the rent you pay for living on this planet. And I'm just delighted to be with so many activists. I'm going to be speaking a little bit about profits and how profits lead us into witness and into nonviolent action. And talk about anger and, about our Tahrir Square coming up in Washington, beginning on October 6th and stopping when we say it stops. Some of you know that I was educated by Jesuits and that I had to study a lot of Thomas Aquinas. Matter of fact, we had to study so much of Thomas Aquinas that other Catholic students in New York used to go around calling us peeping Thomists. Now, I still remember some stuff from those years, and thank goodness I do, because I began to worry about my anger. I got very angry about 10 years ago, really, really angry. In the Bronx, where I grew up, you were allowed to be angry maybe for a day, 2 days at the outside. If you were Irish, they would give you a week. Anger was very much frowned upon. And then I remembered something that Thomas Aquinas said. Now, he wasn't real good on other things he didn't know anything about, like women or the sun and the stars, but he's pretty good about virtue. And he wrote a lot about virtue, and when he came to the virtue of anger, got that? The virtue of anger, okay? He complained bitterly that there was no word for it in Latin. It manet innominata, it remains unnamed. And so it's hard to write about something if you don't know how to say it. See, he brought the old Pythagorean idea where virtue is in the middle. Okay, it's just enough of what you need. Take courage, for example. Just exactly right, what you need. Too much foolhardiness, too little cowardice. Okay, so virtue's in the middle. Well, he searched for what he would say about anger, and he had to go back to the 4th century, John Chrysostom, who said, "He or she who is not angry when there is just cause for anger sins." Why? Because anger respici bonum justitiae. Anger looks to the good of justice, and if you can live amid injustice without anger, you are unjust. Okay? Be clear. Be clear. And Thomas, as was his wont, he always added his own little corollary to these things, and he railed against what he called unreasoned patience. That's the best translation you can do for that. And he said, unreasoned patience sows the seeds of vice, nourishes negligence, and encourages not only bad people, but good people to do evil. Okay? So, that's what I'd like to set up as the keynote here. And I'd like to show a little thing here which represents the Turkish Prime Minister Erdogan at Davos 10 days after the Israeli invasion and bombing of Gaza at the end of 2008, beginning of 2009, 22 days of havoc, during which our president and our president-elect said absolutely nothing.
This has been a powerful and passionate debate. It's a debate that could go on tonight for hours, but we've already gone well past our closing time. I mean, Mr. Prime Minister, with apologies to Prime Minister Erdogan.
That is David Ignatius.
1 minute. 1 minute.
Well, you know,
1 minute. Come on. 1 minute. Okay. 1 minute.
I'm going to hold you to the 1 minute, please.
President Perez, you are older than I am, and and you have a very strong voice. I feel that you perhaps feel a bit guilty, and that's why perhaps you have been so strong in your voice, so loud. Well, you kill people. I remember the children who died on beaches. And I remember two former prime ministers in your country who said that they felt very happy when they were able to enter Palestine on tanks. Now, those are former prime ministers who have said that they have been very satisfied with themselves when they entered Palestinian territories on tanks. And I find it very sad that people applaud what you have said, because there are many people who have been killed, and I think that it is very wrong, and it's not humanitarian to applaud any actions which have had that kind of a result. I've taken many notes. Unfortunately, there's no time to respond to all of them, but I will just say two things.
We can't start the debate again, please. We just don't have time.
Excuse me, sözümü kesmeyin.
Please let me finish.
Please, we really do need to get people to dinner.
Sixth commandment, thou shalt not kill. But we are talking about killing. And second point, Gilad Atzamoni says that Israeli barbarianism is way beyond what it should be. Then there is the international relations professor from Oxford University, Avi Shalom, has said this. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. So I don't think I will come back to Davos after this. Thank you. Because you don't let me speak. The president spoke for 25 minutes. I have spoken only half of that.
Over to our host, Prime Minister, do what?
Thank you very much. If you stay for one minute, please.
No unreasoned patience there.
Yeah.
Now think about the concept of unreasoned patience. Think about Germany during the 30s. Not even the churches, Catholic or the Lutheran churches, could find their voice. Now that's what we don't want to be guilty of, unreasoned patience. You know, this is a prophetic stance here. That's channeling righteous anger, the virtue of anger, into a good direction. I think that's what we need to do. And we can go back to Isaiah. How many of you knew that Isaiah went around for 2 years stark naked preaching the word? A couple did, right? Well, you know, some exegetes in their wisdom say, well, it's not clear that he was always stark naked, just during liturgical services. That may be true, but it doesn't get the man off the hook, does it? What was he saying? What was he trying to say? I think what he was trying to say is, look, I strip myself naked, and you say, oh, isn't that awful? Isn't that terrible? Shameless. You are stripped of the vision with which Yahweh blessed you, a vision of justice and shalom, and that is far worse than being physically naked. I think that's a vision that we need to resurrect, not only from whatever religious heritage we have, but from the basic tenets of the American Revolution and the founders that did risk their lives, their fortunes, and their sacred honor so that we could have the democracy that we have up until 10 years ago. Up until 10 years ago.
Yes, sir.
Now, prophets come in unusual sizes and shapes, and I have to tell you that over the last 10 years, most of the prophets I've run into happen to be women. I mentioned my good friend Colonel Wright there the other night, but many of you probably don't know that she was in large measure responsible for the fact that there was a U.S. boat to Gaza this year. She helped raise $400,000 toward that end. Not only that, but she cooperated and inspired incredibly gutsy and incredibly bright, mostly Jewish women in New York City who were not afraid of being called, what is it called? Self-hating Jews. And went on and arranged this wonderful, wonderful exercise we had, where we did break free. We got about, 5-7 nautical miles out to sea, and were turned around by the Greek Coast Guard acting under orders from Papandreou, who was acting under orders from Washington and Tel Aviv. So, not only is Ann Wright the former mayor of Camp Casey, but she'll be with us on October the 6th, and I'm very grateful for that. Cindy Sheehan is another one of these prophets. Colleen Rowley, Susan Harmon out there in California. John Yoo can't go 5 feet without Susan Harmon being right on his steps. Ray Abile of Code Pink, same for Netanyahu when he's here in Washington, or AIPAC and others. Leslie Harris is in Dallas, and our president cannot feel safe going into even the Hilton Hotel without Leslie coming down the escalator with a great big banner saying what our former president was. Well, the list goes on and on. The world can't wait. The very imaginative women in the world can't wait were the ones that got me into the lecture that Rumsfeld was giving 5 years ago, where I had a chance to debate him for 4 whole minutes, and they were responsible for getting me in to see Rumsfeld again. Just 10 days ago in New York City, I got thrown out again. I got thrown out this time. But I also had a chance to see Michael Chertoff, another war criminal, and I had a chance to confront him on how he treated John Walker Lind, an American citizen who was not read his rights, who was the first American tortured in November of 2001, just 2 months after 9/11. Now, I'd like to just also address what I call a typically American fault. I think maybe you can identify with this. We don't like to do anything that we might be made fun of for doing. We like to have some reasonable prospect of success before we embark on anything significant. I mean, who likes to be laughed at? Well, that's not prophetic. We can't be all that worried about success. In acting for justice, it can be a real impediment to worry about success. And one of my favorite prophets, Dan Berrigan, had lots to say about this in his autobiography, which is called To Dwell in Peace. It's out there for 25 years now. This is what he said. To hanker after knowing, to lust after foreknowledge, this brings not joy, but woe. It comes to something like this, a kind of Buddhist truth. The good was to be done because it is good, for no other reason, however plausible or weighty. The good was not subject to efficiency or worthiness or benefit or merit. So there was the rightness, the attractiveness of this. And later on he says, he's talking about, as a seasoned veteran now, after having been arrested many times and protested so many more times, he says, there's always the fear that you might be prattling into a prevailing wind, is the way he puts it. He's a poet, as you know. And then I reflect, He says, if there is a God, and if nonviolent resistance is God's work, then the outcome is in other hands than ours. And not only the outcome, but each step takes on the dignity of the end in itself. Now, you don't have to be a person of faith to know that the good is worth doing because it is good. It helps, at least it helps me, but it's not necessary. The other thing that this allows is it kind of frees you not to take yourself too seriously. And that's really important in this work. I've found out on all those occasions, those many occasions when I've taken myself too seriously. I'd like to just quote one more thing from Dan Berrigan here. He's talking about after Catonsville, when he and his brother Phil were arrested and all, and he says, the act was done. We sat in custody in the back room of Catonsville Post Office, weak with relief, grinning like virtuous gargoyles. 3 or 4 FBI honchos entered portentously. Their leader, a jut-jawed paradigm, surveyed us from the doorway. His eagle eye lit on Philip. He roared out, "Him again! Good God, I'm changing my religion." Dan comments, "I could think of no greater tribute to my brother." So, if for those of you who believe as I do that our God is a God of laughter, and that we are the entertainment, that helps a lot. We don't take ourselves so seriously. And many of these women, some of whom I mentioned here, particularly Code Pink, if you haven't seen the Code Pink intervention of the war addict Obama before the White House there about 2 weeks ago, you need to go on Code Pink's website. It is a scream. I have it on my own website, RaymondMcGovern.com. It's glorious. It's true. And Obama said, no, I can stop anytime I want. So the whole business is about an intervention. And they said, no, you've got to come with us. And the other thing I recall about Berrigan is this one time when he was arrested for like the 5th time, and finally the judge says, so now, Father Berrigan, if I let you go, will you promise not to take a hammer and hit on the missiles at the Air Force Base nearby? And Berrigan says, Your Honor, that's the wrong question. Father Berrigan, what's the right question? And Dan says, the question is whether you'll tell Lyndon Johnson to stop building intercontinental ballistic missiles, and then I'll stop hammering it on them, and you and I can go fishing. So I think I'd like to wind up here. I'd just like to say that there are all kinds of really good prophets out there, contemporary ones. How many of you know who Asma Mahfouz is? She was a 26-year-old woman in a sexist Arab society who got on the equivalent of Facebook and started a revolution in 7 days. Now, for those of you who don't have time now, Amy Goodman has a wonderful 10-minute segment on Asma Mahfouz. What she did, what she said exactly 7 minutes before the 25th of January, when hundreds of thousands of people came down on Tahrir Square in Cairo and started the uprising. It's amazing how she was able to do that. But one person stepping out can do that kind of thing. People always say, well, we don't have not enough people. Well, Cesar Chavez, one of my other heroes, he used to always say, look, speeches are nice, editorials are nice, but without action, nothing's going to happen. And for those of you who say we don't have enough people, there are enough of us. There are already enough of us. What we need to do is move to action. And that's what we're going to do on October 6th. The big challenge, as I see it, is the media. And for those of you who haven't heard me speak before, I say it every time. 49 years in Washington, lots of change have I seen. But there's one change that dwarfs all the others in significance, and that is the fact that we no longer have a free media. That could not be bigger, okay? Good news, of course, is we have a fifth estate. Neither, okay? That's why our government and others are so rabid against WikiLeaks and so much out to do Bradley Manning and Julian Assange in. So, I mention that because that is the challenge as I see it now. And we have 6,000 already signed up for our own Top Career Square in Freedom Plaza in Washington. And I know Freedom Plaza, it's about 2 blocks from the White House. I don't think it can accommodate 6,000, but that's good. What we need is 60 times 6,000. You know why? Because we have to show that we're fed up, just like the Egyptians. We have to show that, look, the rest of you Americans, there is enough money. You don't have to lay off your teachers. What you need to do is stop these awful wars, bring that money home, and save the teachers' jobs, build the infrastructure, do all the other things that our country needs. The wars are feckless to begin with. They're expending all this extra money. What we need to do is confront the upper crust. Now, is it true that Geithner deliberately disobeyed an order from the president with respect to the financial sector? I can believe that very easily. Is it true that Petraeus and the military would do the same? Yeah, I can believe that. Not only because it's a weak president, but because that's the way the powers are arrayed in our government. And so what we need to do is disarray those powers. What we need to do is to what's the word? To expose the upper crust for what my grandmother, my Irish grandmother, said it was. Before I went out for my first job, age 14, working with rich people, she said, "Now Raymond, sit you down now, I have to tell you something." I said, "What is that, Grandma?" She said, "You have to know what the upper crust is." I said, "Grandma, I know what the upper crust is." I was going out to caddy a very exclusive golf course on the dunes of Long Island, where Howard Dean's mother and father had a place, and where I watched this little teenager in Madras shorts trying to learn how to play golf. Okay? But it was very exclusive, meaning, for those of you not from New York, Howard Dean's wife could not have lunch at the Maidstone Club. Okay? So it was exclusive, it was super rich, and my grandmother said, "Sit you down, Raymond, and I'll tell you the definition of the upper crust. The upper crust is a bunch of crumbs held together by a knot of dough." And that's what we have to contend with. We have to expose that. We have to get beneath the crust, and we have to stop asking ourselves, will we be successful? As Dan Berrigan would say, wrong question. Will we be faithful? Thanks very much.